Welcome to Cybersecurity, a brave new word. This is, well, I can always obfuscate my name, but sometimes do realize that obfuscation might be more secure, but oftentimes you might not find the right contextual information that you need. You need my name, so here it is. So this is Dr. Pratham Milton Datta. So welcome once again to Cybersecurity, a brave new word. Now this is how Huxley's A Brave New Word begins. It says, or it reads, a squat grey building of only 34 stories. Over the main entrance the words Central London Hatchery and Conditioning Centre, and in a shield the world's state motto, community, identity, stability. Now that could very well be an office of the Chinese Communist Party, Facebook, WeChat, Twitter, or Truth Social. But the big story is, what is it that makes us secure? Is it everybody having the same face in a very uniform society? Or is it always this interesting tension between what we want in terms of convenience and control and what we also want in terms of privacy and security? So here we go. Remember, life is about finding yourself. Isn't just about finding yourself. It's about creating yourself. And this is George Bernard Shaw. So don't just find yourself, create it, right? Create your own life by understanding what are the central tenets that you can glean from this and put to good use. So here's the discussion structure. To understand, there are two primary pieces. There is a cybersecurity service philosophy, which is known as the very famous CIA triad. Confidentiality, C. Integrity, I. Availability, A. Confidentiality is basically privacy and ensuring that everything is encrypted so that even if it falls into the wrong hands, they can't read it. Integrity is maintaining accuracy, right? If you don't want your data to be tampered with, you want to be, we talk about fake news and everything, but fake news is only when news has been slightly tweaked or sometimes radically tweaked to become more sensational and also fake in the process. And then availability is you need to be able to access information. Information needs to be available when you need it, right? You should be able to log on to a page when you need it. You should be able to open an app when you need it. That's availability. So remember, CIA, confidentiality, integrity, availability are the three central tenets that make up the CIA triad. The other thing is, understand that cybersecurity has a protection philosophy, which is always build cybersecurity management is built upon very much like a healthcare adage. Prevention, try and prevent breaches. If you can't, very much like try and prevent falling sick. If you can't, you should be able to detect what's wrong with you or what's wrong with the organization that has been breached. And thirdly, mitigate, very much like giving you a drug or giving you some medicine, right, which is a drug, and making you feel better. That's mitigation. So prevention, try and prevent attacks. If attacks happen, find out a way to detect it very quickly and then figure out a way to mitigate it. So the brave new world is that of convenience and security. Convenience is interesting because we always want things to be simple, straightforward, easy to access. On the other hand, quick, fast, everything in front of you. The pages you visited, the ads come up on another page. That's convenience, that's lovely. Yet, it oftentimes means your data is being shared across multiple partners, can reduce security. The second thing is understanding security and privacy. There is this panopticon, right? This was Jeremy Bentham who mentioned that in a world where everybody, if it were a prison, if it were to be a prison where the camera is pointing at every single cell, every person, would that person become a more reformed person, right? Would you stop being dissolute because you know you're being watched all the time? The third is something called salus populi. Salus populi it's a very famous line by Cicero, I think. It says, salus populi lex suprema est. The protection of the people is the only objective of the state. And that goes into governance. How do you protect people, right? If that is the only, how should a country protect its individuals? How should a company protect its customers? And finally, taking them together, how do you protect the assets that are important to us, which is protecting Gondor? We once published a paper on explainable AI, where we looked at how human biases drive AI that use deep preferential learning to create echo chambers. And echo chambers are great initial attack surfaces for phishing attacks, right? And attack surfaces, what becomes a very lucrative set that you can hit. Now, if people know you hate something or you love something, it's very easy to lure you into believing that this is something to do with what you love or what you hate, right? And as the hacker's vacation notice always reads, they're always going phishing, but not phishing with an F-I-S-H-I-N-G, but P-H-I-S-H-I-N-G. So, let's get into the brave new world of the jujutsu of hacking. Now, hacking has happened for a very long time, right? We try to break an existing setup. Once upon a time, even during Napoleon's time, they used to use, in order to, and now we're talking about early 1800s, right? Late 1700s, like late 1700s. I think 1792 is when Napoleon got started becoming very famous. And Napoleon's time, they used to have these semaphores, which used to be these articulated sets to convey message long distances. And somebody figured out a way to tamper with them so that the semaphores could send different stock market messages, so that people on the other side would know the information before they would have a horse and carriage ride up to them and give them that information. Same thing, the Great Wall of China, one of the largest structures in the world that possibly can be seen from space. The Great Wall was breached not because somebody actually climbed it or broke through it, but because they found a simple door that they bribed somebody to get through that door. And this was the Warsaw Fortress. All roads lead to Hotel Ukraine during the Russian invasion of Ukraine. This fantastic group called Anonymous, they all banded together, people from all around, hackers from all around the world, to hit Russia. And what they did was they ended up breaching Russia's Uber version of taxi service, and as if creating ride requests, led a huge coterie of taxis going to Hotel Ukraine, just as a show, just to showcase that they are standing for Ukraine and against Russia. And then, of course, you see this relatively funny cartoon which says, and oftentimes this is how companies think. We've narrowed our security risk to two groups. People who work for us are all automatically secure. People that don't work for us are automatically threats. But rarely, a lot of threats oftentimes are insider threats. And insider threats are not people who advertently do things, but also inadvertently do things that could become problematic. The other thing to understand is, how does a cybersecurity attack occur? The first thing is, Hackers strategize, then they deploy, then they steal, sabotage, or encrypt. In strategizing, they try to figure out, what do we hit? Do we hit a software, or do we hit the process of delivering the software, right? So very much like, do we rob the bank, or do we rob the stagecoach that's actually carrying money from the bank to another place? Because a bank might be a bit harder to hit, but a stagecoach, which is going through multiple places, right? It's a supply chain, might be an easier target. Another thing is something called a zero-day vulnerability, which basically means 0 day. It's called 0 day because that's the day a software is released. It's a day zero. That's the day when people, when the software companies oftentimes don't really know what exactly could go wrong with the software. And a lot of hackers try to hit software that day itself. Then, of course, you have something called DDoS attacks, or distributed denial of service, which is you have millions and millions and millions of requests sent to a server, as if like a web page. And when a web page can't handle so many requests, very much like a Black Friday rush, you can see, as you oftentimes know, you hear stories in the news where Black Friday rushes stop people from entering the store, very much like that. It reduces availability. And then, of course, you have things like spear phishing, which is phishing, but focused phishing towards a specific person, oftentimes managers and executives. And then you also have something called vishing nowadays, which is voice phishing, where they use deep fakes to act like it's a message from somebody you know. Once they do that, so that's strategizing. How do we hack? Then is deployment. What do we actually run? You can typically run a lot of malware. You've got the Sunburst attack that occurred on the SolarWinds server, Ryuk, Conti, Heartbleed, SSL, buffer overflows, and so forth. You can even deploy encryptors to encrypt things. So this is, what kind of payload are you dropping, right? And then what is the final objective? What's the denouement of this? Is to steal, sabotage, or encrypt. Oftentimes, there's something called APT, Advanced Persistent Threats, that hide inside your system or your network, constantly keep changing their attributes so that your antivirus and your anti-malware can't really spot them, and then move laterally, which is move from one maybe application to another application, one part of the network to another part of the network, one system to another system. They oftentimes, and then they set up something called a CNC, which is a command and control setup, where they start relaying, especially when the computer might be in idle mode, you're not working on it, so you know that nobody's really looking at it right now. So they might send something back to the mothership, which is the hacker's base of attack, and say, can I download some software? This is the information that I found. That's a CNC command and control setup. Then there are things like Empire, which are post-exploit toolkits. There are Mimikatz, where they try to steal user credentials or act like you're going to use it. Trickware, which use false Active Directory accounts to fool the system into believing that these are the right credentials. And credentials are nothing but things like username and password that match people of a certain, with certain access privileges, right? So might say, okay, this is the access privilege of a faculty, this is the access privilege of a manager, this is the access privilege of an executive, this is the access privilege of an analyst, to actually access the Active Directory accounts and act like it's tricking it. So, understand that the Brave New World is a story of convenience and security that requires understanding three pieces of the puzzle. You have to understand the technology. What is the technology that lies at the heart of cybersecurity? You also have to understand business processes. Business processes are the way we do things. Oftentimes, if you can have fantastic technology, but if you've got bad habits, bad ways of doing things. It doesn't really matter how good the technology is. And lastly, people. Understanding behaviors of people. So rather than processes, understand behaviors of individuals or behaviors of groups. And then, of course, how do you match them together? To understand, to work through people and processes, create good policies. To work across people and technologies, create good training. And to act across technology and processes, create great process re-engineering. And always realize more convenience means less security.